I think we should do that. Everybody should do an audition tape of their Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor. Like, just we could all just like, hey, Soupy Superman. Yeah, yeah. That's what it. Just be nervous. That's what it is. That's the impression.
Ooh.
Yeah. It also doesn't help that
I'm gonna destroy something.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Young Geek versus Old Geek. I'm James. I'm going to be your odd host, and this is the Watchman over in the corner to keep track of things. So today we're going to be looking at two movies thought of as bad films, and we have two geeks today that are going to be trying to prove that their movie is actually a good film and worth your time.
Hi, my name is John Mercurio Knight, and I will be arguing as the old geek for the film Alien 4.
Hi, my name is Jack Swartz. I'm arguing for the Young Geek, and I'll be arguing for the film Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
All right, so those are going to be the two films we'll be arguing today. Jack, you won the Boing Boss, so we're going to go ahead and go to you first.
I'm going to start off by saying this is the best on-screen Batman we have ever seen in film. Now, that's a bold claim. I understand what I'm saying, but hear me out. Ben Affleck, Batfleck, if you will, is the best on-screen Batman. And I'm only talking in terms of physical, real-life filmmaking. If you want to get in the argument of cartoons or comics or whatever you want, that's a completely different argument. Ben Affleck is a genius Batman, and here's why. He plays it so profoundly and so perfectly to a T. He doesn't take himself too seriously because he's a guy dressed as a bat. And that's the genius of Zack Snyder's entire franchise. While they take it very seriously, as from Man of Steel to Batman vs. Superman to Justice League, we see a transition. Now, Man of Steel, we can argue, is not a great film. But Batman vs. Superman, we see the relaxation of Zack Snyder's filmmaking, and we understand that he understands himself what he's getting into. Batman vs. Superman, while it has some plot elements that might not flow, it actually ties in like a comic book feel, which capitalizes on the idea of a comic book movie. We see that flow in Batman vs. Superman. Same way we see it in Justice League later on. Although Justice League wasn't exactly a Zack Snyder flick, Batman vs. Superman is secretly genius, especially because of Ben Affleck's performance alone.
So, for one thing, Alien 4 has actually aged extremely well. If you look at Alien vs. Predator, it's horrible by comparison, and it came out 7 years later. So why this film is great, let's just go through the points. Cinematography and production design. You have French director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, best known for City of Lost Children and Amélie. His cinematographer Darius Conjal also worked on City, which functioned kind of like a love letter to classic cinema with a strangely beautiful twist. And so Jeunet or Pierre brings that very French quality, old-time beauty to the production design. The military ship, the Auriga, that serves as the backdrop of the film, not only feels lived in, but also feels technologically futuristic. The way the rooms are connected, the way they shot it, it all feels very thought out and paced as far as that goes. Second point, memorable score. Whenever I think Alien 4, the score immediately starts playing in my head. The themes are clear and memorable, setting the mood throughout. It's easily my favorite score in any of the Alien films. 3, cast, which I could do a whole video on because I absolutely love the cast. It's an eclectic cast full of character actors, all bringing something to the table. From the smallest role on up, obviously you have Sigourney Weaver at the center of it, holding it all together. Point 4, body horror. Much like the franchise as a whole, It's always stemmed, there's always been an aspect of body horror, and Alien Resurrection takes that up a step with the clone chamber of horrors, and even with the final monster stems from that. You've got the crew of the Betty, feels like a prototype for Joss Whedon eventually to make Firefly, and if that's not a good point for it, I don't know what is.
Those are the two arguments. Which film is seen as a horrible film, but actually is quite good? We've got Alien Resurrection, who is directed by a famous French director who had done City of Lost Children and would go on to direct the classic Amelie, written by Joss Whedon, who would go on to be one of the greatest science fiction writer-directors of our time. Then we have Zack Snyder's Batman versus Superman, who has got a very dark and gritty Batman film from Zack Snyder, who is not, even though he has got some horrible movies, has got some of the best looking films of the last 20 years. Do you think these films are looked at poorly because they were coming off such success? And if it didn't have that success, the second part of this question is can these stand alone? Like if it was just completely separated, would these films be able to stand alone?
In this case, I can say totally, because Alien 4 very much is its own cosm. And even if you didn't know, if you'd never seen any previous Ripley film, anything you need to know is established and played in the film. You could just watch it completely and it's a complete story. You don't need to watch anything before or after. Knowing what came before only enhances Ripley's performance, but everything else is kind of separated. And it also enhances the fact that how dangerous these things really are, but it's not necessary.
For both of you, and we'll start with you, Jack, what do you think excels in the script that people don't give enough credit, and what do you think hurts this film?
I would have to say excels the connection and the writing between Alfred and Bruce Wayne, Batman. A lot of this film works because of the story presented through Alfred and Batman, Bruce Wayne. He mentions, he says, "We're criminals, Alfred, always have been." That line hits. I think that's genius because it really plays into this idea of the universe that, hey, we're vigilantes. What we're doing is not okay to some extent. Jesse Eisenberg's a great actor, but he plays it like a Riddler, Joker, not Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is supposed to be cold and calculating, and you can tell that he's smarter than you. He's not supposed to be like, "Ooh, I want chaos." It's like, no, I want to kill Superman.
Oh, no, I completely agree. Little squeaky voiced Lex Luthor just doesn't work from concept to conclusion, and just little odd things like the little candy thing and the little squeaks that he incorporates in there. Everything about that portrayal is ridiculous. And I've seen him in other things, and I like Jesse in other things, but I completely hate him in that role. And he's one of the most cringe-worthy, the only bad casting choice I would say in that entire film. I wouldn't say he's the ultimate Batman by any stretch for live action, though the voice thing was really cool. That I will give to Batman. I like the physicality of him. I still have to give it to Christian Bale. Other than the voice, which is the only cringe-worthy part of that performance, which you kind of get used to it. And as far as Zack Snyder getting more comfortable with himself, I don't know. I felt more comfortable in Watchmen. He felt way more at ease because the source material was far superior, whereas the source material for Batman versus Superman stems from two sources: The Dark Knight Returns, and barely pulls anything from it because it's a very overrated older story, and Doomsday, which is how do you do Doomsday when you haven't even introduced the DC roster to annihilate? How do you do that?
I agree with a lot of what you said about that film. I've seen Alien Resurrection, and I do think that a lot of it is very well done. Especially I agree with the scene where we see Ripley going through the clones, and that's a very haunting, very shocking and memorable scene where you feel this pain. However, put yourself into the world building only because of the script that they were given, a script that was so watered down and rewritten so many times from their original source material. You can tell where, okay, this is this cut, here's this is where they mesh in the middle, instead of here we're getting this. We have to make this movie. Do we have a script? Fuck it, just slap whatever we got together and we'll figure it out when we get there. In not in the good kind of way, if that, you know, not like an Iron Man, we'll figure it out when we get there, more like a whatever kind of way.
You have somebody who has never seen your movie and all they've heard is garbage about it. How do you convince them that they should watch your film?
You should watch it because you should go watch City of Lost Children and fall in love with that movie, and then realize that it's that director doing an alien movie that's written by Joss Whedon. And at the very least, go in with no expectations of the first two films. Just put them out of your mind and just let it wash over you. Let the score wash over you and just go with the ride. Don't let your preconceptions get in the way.
It's fun, I guess. There are fun moments, and it is cool to see that fight between Batman and Superman, for however short it is. Want crazy shit. The third act is fucking phenomenal because it's just, I would say, it's totally worth the watch for the entire third act.
There it is. That's our debate this week, is talking about which of these films is actually a great film, Alien Resurrection or Batman versus Superman. Tell us below and give us comments of what you think is actually a great film. Is it one of these two or is it something else? And we'll see you next time on Young Geek versus Old Geek. Goodbye. The infamous Martha line, which is a shame because I think had they finessed it a little bit, that scene could have been very powerful. Rather than the fucking Martha thing, ditch Martha. All we need, because they gave us Batman's origin story again for the 80th time on film, and all we needed to do is Batman as a kid seeing the robber kill his parents and do it with such disgust, and then flash to while he's about to kill Superman, realizing he's the robber. He's in that position. If they would have directed and finessed it that way, of Batman realizing he's turned into the thing that made him, he's turned into the ultimate bad guy, that would have been so powerful and so wonderful. And that was like a missed opportunity for me. Instead, they tried to connect it to the names. Mm-hmm. And I don't know.
I can actually see that. That sounds like a way better version of that scene.
That would have been interesting to see. My mom's name is Vicky, and I love my mother. If I'm torturing somebody and they like say Vicky, I'd be like, I don't know who the fuck you're talking about, pal. Like, and stab I'm not.
Why did you say that name? Why did you say that name?
Exactly, because it's somebody's name. Couldn't give a shit. Just a name. But I'm also not a super detective. I'm not like a super detective might have made the connection. I would have been like, shut up, dead man. Stab, stab, stab.